Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming out with another build guide, and this time we're doing the Magic Find Freezing Pulse Totem Hierophant that uses Righteous Fire, and the idea on this build is to just get as much quantity and rarity with it as you can reasonably get, and I think this build really pushes the envelope on that while still being pretty fast. It's obviously not as fast as the like quant Deadeye setups that you see a lot. But the idea is for this to be safer and have a bit more quant and rarity, even if it's a bit slower, and it's easier to set up is the idea. So it costs less because you don't need all the expensive items that the Ranger build gets. And it's not contingent on freezing anything to add any quant or anything like that. So if you get really nasty mods, or if you don't exactly freeze an enemy, it's not really a warrior or anything like that. So that's the idea behind this. I'm going to try and make a hardcore variant. I'd say right now this is pretty much a softcore variant. This one's going to be the easiest to use at all times because the idea is it uses Righteous Fire to degen your mana so that your mana is always degened to the point where your flask, your divination distillate always stays up. So that's kind of the goal here. Now, the problem with that is obviously we can stay positive when we have our distillate up, but you don't have much life regen over the cap, and you're already working with a very small amount of life, and you don't have any mana basically, even though you have Mind Over Matter, so you have no defense there. So you have very little defense for hardcore. I think this definitely still could work in if you stuck to like very low maps in hardcore. Like I don't really die on this at all, but there's probably safer versions that can be made, and I'm working on those. It's just going to be maybe a little bit more tedious to do the flask management. But on softcore, I think this is sort of optimal because you're never going to not have Distill It up, and obviously if you die, it's not a big deal, even though you really do die. So it's not like you're dying all the time or anything. Because this build does have some pretty good freeze potential. So that's kind of like the forward, and let's get into the actual gear. So those two Venters, pretty standard. These are pretty bad. I think they're like 15 chaos each. When I look for Venters, basically I'm looking for positive quant, obviously. Typically want at least 7 or more, even if I'm going budget route, which this was. And then I want positive rarity. I'm not really looking for super, I'm not looking to get 40 rarity on my Venters, but if it happens, it happens. But I basically don't want like negative 40, you don't want like a ton of negative rarity or something like that. And you don't want like insanely bad resist, obviously, because then it makes it impossible to cap res, especially on this build because you're kind of spread thin using the MF items. The one thing you can do is if you do have like a really high value of minus res on one of these rings, you can kind of balance it out with a value of positive res on the other ring. So you can do stuff like that, but keep in mind you're not really getting much res from a lot of the other gear, especially because you have to use a white item. So, yeah. You're going to be spread a little bit thin. Don't get really bad Venters. Now, Goldworm, this is pretty standard. I got lucky with the enchant on it. You don't need the enchant, but obviously it's just really good. 17 quant roll on these is decent, probably like 5 chaos. Getting a perfect quant roll on these is expensive, so I wouldn't advocate for that, especially early on. People just pay way too much for a perfect roll, I guess, when you have to start out, right? Like, obviously, I guess you can make the argument that if you're going to do, like, thousands of hours of MF on this character, then the 3% quant is probably worth it for the minimal investment, basically, of an extra, like, 40 chaos. But when you're just starting out, you don't need 20 quant goldworms. It's going to be a pretty negligible difference. Conversely, the Sedima's Touch, it's very easy to get a max quant roll. So normally you can drop 5 chaos and get this. If you're just starting out, they might be a bit more expensive, like at the start of a new league. So just get what's appropriate, obviously. Like, don't spread yourself super thin on currency, getting a perfect one if they're expensive. But usually it's not too bad getting a 16 quant one. Bisco's Leash, we use this over the quantity belt. Well, this one has quantity, but the other one obviously has 3 more quantity. But we use this because it just gives so much rarity, and it gives Rampage. Rampage is really good, helpful for clearing, keeps you safe. It's just really good. I think it gives you more damage and stuff like that. It's just a really good skill. A really good affix, basically, or whatever you'd call it. And where this build gets different from a lot of builds is it runs the aesthetic. Now, this is pretty much something that I've always wanted to run on like more MF builds, but it obviously can be a bit annoying. Like, it'd be very difficult to run this, I feel like, on the Ranger because you're just so spread thin already, and then you have to use like a white item to get the full effect and a blue item. So it's much easier to run on a build like this. And typically how I set it up is I just have the helmet be white and the chest be rare, but you can kind of switch these three pieces around, right? So if you don't need a ton of res, you can use a rare scepter with a blue chest or a blue helm, and then the opposite one is white. If you do want a lot of res, you use a high res chest with a blue scepter with attack speed and spell damage. And this is the easiest way to get it, is just hit an attack speed roll that you like and then craft the spell damage on, because hitting both is kind of a pain, especially a high roll. This one right here is basically I just got like a white chest or a white helm because you can also get the helm enchant. You can play this build with Freeze Pulse or Frostbolt Totem. Now, if you play it with Frostbolt Totem, you don't really need the helm enchant as much, but if you're playing with Freeze Pulse, I would very much recommend getting the 30% Freeze Pulse projectile speed, as well as getting a 20% Freeze Pulse, because the difference is very noticeable between having those and not having it. And I wouldn't really like the feel of the build nearly as much if I didn't have the helm enchant. So if you're going to play Freeze Pulse, definitely get the helm enchant. Luckily, it's not that hard because you only need it on a white helm, right? Even the 20% enchant will work. You don't really need the 30, but the 30 is cheap enough now anyways. So that's why I use it. Yeah, obviously, just stack up res in the chest. A note about the chest and like the helm is that you probably don't want ES bases. I just happened to have this Val Regalia, and it had really good rolls for this particular build. Like, it had 2 res over like 45. So I used it, but ideally you would use a ES evasion or ES armor chest, because obviously you still want to be able to get your colors relatively easily, right? You don't want it to be a super pain in the ass, but at the same time the ES is pretty useless because it gets burned off insanely quick with Righteous Fire, because you have no ES regen or anything like that. So like any added defense here doesn't really work out so well. I guess what you could do is if you had like really high ES values here, like if you used a Hubris and this was a 400 ES chest, you could put your, well, no, you couldn't even do that. I was going to say you could put your ES on your mana, but it would just degen anyway, because we are degenning with the Righteous Fire. So yeah, there's really no way to preserve your ES in this setup, and you're kind of just boned. So you're not going to be able to take full advantage of it, so you might as well just get something else. And that's pretty much the gear. I'll go over the actual links. The links are, I use a Critical Strike, Blood Magic, Faster Casting, Spell Totem, and Control Destruction. Now obviously we have to use Blood Magic because we have very little mana, as you can see here. We have 9 mana out of 987, and that's not enough to cast. But you have enough regen with your Flask active especially, where you can definitely cast your totems, and it's not like you're taking a ton of damage, as you'll see in the preview video. So you'll be fine. You can also use something like the Covenant here if you really don't want to have the extra blood magic thing, and then you gain an additional link as well. You gain an additional 2 links basically, because you gain add chaos damage, and you don't have to have the blood magic link. Now the only thing about the Covenant is that it has life but doesn't really have any res, and it's a 6-link unique chest. So there's obviously challenges to overcome there, just getting the 6-link unique chest, and then the fact that there's no res on it. But obviously it's probably technically better, just given the fact that you don't have to use the blood magic gem, which has the like mana multiplier on it, which is quite high. So there's that. And then what do we do with the mana in terms of reserving it? Well, you can do kind of whatever you want. I do Purity of Fire, Purity of Elements, and then Frostbite. If you really want, you can run another Purity, and like I said, so that allows you to free up more stuff with your chest. You could theoretically get a better Scepter and make one of these blue, one of these white. So you can do a lot of different setups with this. But yeah, right now I'm just using Blasphemy on Frostbite. Not necessary at all, really, though. Maybe just helps to clear a little bit, but you know, you can always just have Frostbite for bosses and stuff, because this build pretty much kills trash decently anyways. And honestly, the Blasphemy is not super impressive to me because you don't have a lot of like radius to support it. So it's something I'm just kind of trying out, and I'm not entirely sold on it. So you can do a lot of different stuff there. Obviously, all your stuff's going to pretty much need to be on Blood Magic, but luckily you don't really have much stuff to do. So obviously your movement skill setup is on Blood Magic, as you can see right here. Your Frost Bomb, which I do recommend for bosses if you're going to try and kill the bosses, the level 1s or whatever, is on Blood Magic. Your Stone Golem's on Blood Magic because you don't even have enough mana to cast it once, but it's not really that much of a pain in the ass. Still have a lot of slots left over and stuff. Could do stuff like Vol Haste and stuff like that. It's just this setup isn't really super optimized yet, but wanted to get the video out there. Obviously, it's pretty much finished, and you can just add in whatever you want. Like, I think Vol Haste would be a great option to add in, right? Righteous Fire, I have it on Blood Magic just because it's supported with the Stone Golem. This is the movement skill setup. This is the Frost Bomb setup with increased duration. And then these are the auras right here. I have Vitality in there in case I want to change, but unfortunately you don't really get much from Vitality because you just have a low amount of life period, so you don't get much regen from it. I would say it's probably not worth it. You're better off running either a Blasphemy or a another Res Aura. And here's the Blasphemy Frostbite. And that's pretty much the links. Obviously, going into the tree, we get Conviction of Power, Ritual Awakening, and Divine Guidance. Now, one thing to note about the mana is that before you reach a certain total of life, you're going to have some issues in the sense that your mana is going to keep regenning. And that's because you get basically mana from this node when your totems are out. Now, it's not a huge problem because what you do in a case like that is you just undo, like you could undo your Frostbite, for example. And then when you put on your Righteous Fire, okay, you wait for it to degen all your mana when you start the map. Then you activate your Distill It. Now, your mana and your life is obviously going to start going up, and your mana is going to start going up, but it's not going to go up very fast. It's going to go up very slowly. So it's never going to like hit 300, basically, especially given how like you have Mind Over Matter. So if anything touches you at all, you're getting it chunked out of your mana. So the build works absolutely fine even when you don't hit the life threshold, because what's happening is the life is getting high, and as the life gets higher, the burn gets stronger. So once the life passes a certain threshold, it does degen your mana completely, like I'm going to show you here. But when the life is like 2800 or something like that, it doesn't quite happen. But that's not really a problem, because like I said, you just undo one of your auras and you start the mana at the bottom, and it doesn't have nearly enough time to regen to the top. So still, it's very viable to use the build and stuff like that. Let me re-reserve this, and I'll just show you guys what it looks like with Righteous Fire on. We got our Golem up. Oh, I have to put something in the... I'll just put this Freeze Pulse in for now, because I don't have it. Okay. So we got Totems up. Right. And then... So as you can see, we go down to 3 mana, and walking around, we are absolutely fine here. If you pop the flask, you can see even with Blood Magic, it's not a big deal. This flask is pretty much up 24/7, very easy to keep up. We take the flask nodes for that reason. The Alchemist Cluster here. So yeah, really easy to keep this build up and sustain with it as you're moving through maps, because you're pretty much always going to have 4 totems up, because the totems have an insane amount of duration, and you're just leapfrogging them pretty much all the time. So no worries there. I typically just use a Seething. A Seething is actually kind of powerful in this build because it, like, you have a lower amount of life, so it restores a large percentage relative to your actual pool. And then I have it catalyzed anyway, so I run 2 life flasks. Movement Flask, Diamond Flask, and Divination Distill It. If you need more damage, you can run Wise Oak, but it's not really necessary in most cases, especially with the type of maps you're going to be farming. So, yeah, there's that. And think that's pretty much it. Let me open the thing and you can just check out the tree here. So this is the tree. Obviously we're running our jewels here, the first nose. Other than that, you just get like damage gems where you can. Like I said, be sure to pick up the Alchemist Cluster. Getting Frostwalker actually really helps just because of the res. And you put obviously a point into Mind Over Matter, but you don't want to get all the mana because then it fucks up with your mana regen becomes too high. Especially with this node and this node. So yeah, that's pretty much the build, and let's just total the quant, I guess, that we've got here. So we've got 7, 7, it's 14, right? And then we've got this, which is 16, so 30, and then 47, and then what else? 52, oh, the neck is, next 13, okay, yeah, 65, and there's something else. Oh, the distillate, yeah. So there's a 65, and then, yeah, so it's pretty, 82, yeah, not too bad. Obviously, that's with without, like, max rolls or anything. You can obviously run the prior rings. You can make this as expensive as you want, but this is kind of, like, really budget. Obviously, using all budget MF gear. So you get, like, over 80 quant, and pretty much at all times. Then you get a lot of rarity because you get, like, 88 from this. Whatever is on your Ventors, a ton from the belt when you keep your thing up, and like 50 from the distillate. I think it goes to 60 on the top roll. So yeah, just a really good amount of rarity, which is nice actually because finding uniques is never bad either. So pretty good MF setup. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna have the build demonstrations up soon. I already have them recorded. Just gonna repost them. So yep, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll talk to you guys later.